She says that Blackout, the album that she'd worked on when her little boys were really tiny babies, was the thing that she was most proud of in her whole career. And it came out around Halloween in 2007. I was supposed to perform Gimme More at the VMAs to help promote it. I didn't want to, but my team was pressuring me to get out there and show the world that I was fine. And the only problem was that I was not fine. She said backstage at the VMAs that night, nothing was going right. There was a problem with my costume and my hair extensions. I hadn't slept the night before. I was dizzy. It was less than a year since I'd had my second baby in 2 years, but everyone was acting like my not having six-pack abs was offensive. I couldn't believe I was going to have to go on stage feeling the way I felt. Okay, can we just pause for a second? Let's look at the costume. Why was that what they put her in? I mean, first of all, honestly, she looks fantastic for having just had 2 kids in 2 years. I wish I looked that good. But that's just not a costume that she had to wear. It's not like she had to wear this costume in order to perform this song. She could have worn something that would have had more coverage, that she could have felt comfortable in. Who could go out and perform with confidence if you don't feel confident in your body and you're wearing like a couple of little strips of clothes? You know? Give her something she can physically feel confident in so she can exude confidence. Don't be like, that was the worst performance ever. Why weren't you prancing and jumping and whatnot when you know that she didn't feel physically good? First of all, she didn't feel physically well because she felt dizzy and hadn't slept well and all that. But like her body, her figure, she's used to doing these real robust moves with this, tight little body. But as somebody who has 3 kids herself, no one wants to dance and see this jiggle. I don't want to see it. I know you don't want to see it. So she's kind of not moving a lot, but would you want to move when you got no clothes over your midsection? I mean, this is how we'd be dancing on that stage. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So to make matters that much worse, who should she run into backstage? Justin Timberlake. And it's been a while since she'd seen him, and she's seeing him at the lowest point of her life. And everything was going great in his world. He was at the top of his game in every way, and he had a lot of swagger, and I was having a panic attack. I hadn't rehearsed enough. I hated the way I looked. I knew it was going to be bad. She says that the entire performance was horrific. She said that everywhere she looked, there were these big screens that were mirroring her image back to her, and she said she felt like she was looking at herself in a funhouse mirror. She said, I'm not going to defend that performance or say that it was good, but I will say that as performers, we all have bad nights, and they don't usually have consequences so extreme. She said, you don't usually have one of the worst days of your life in the same exact place and time that your ex has one of his best. Justin glided down the runway into his performance. He was flirting with girls in the audience, including one who turned around and arched her back, shaking her breasts as he sang to her. And then he was sharing the stage with Nelly Furtado and Timberland. So fun, so free, so light. Later that night, the comedian Sarah Silverman came out on stage to roast me. Okay, please. I mean, Sarah Silverman is a roast of herself every time she starts to talk. It's the reason why people think that female comedians are not funny. Because she's not funny. She's got that horrible baby voice that she just says these horrifically mean and crude things in. And none of it's ever funny. I don't think I have ever laughed at one thing that Sarah Silverman has ever said. She said that at the age of 25, Britney had done everything worthwhile in her life that she'd ever do. And then she goes on to say that Britney's 2 babies were the most adorable mistakes Britney had ever made. Britney says at the time she didn't hear what Sarah was saying. She heard about it later because at the time she was backstage sobbing hysterically. What the hell, Sarah Silverman? You always were the worst. Why would you do that? Why? Because it's like Sarah Silverman is a performer in her own right. She has fame of her own, but she also knows that she herself is a human being. And has she ever received any bad press? How would she like it to have all of the worst moments of her life caught on camera, her grief caught on camera, and then to have somebody else in the industry who knows what it's like to be in the public eye when you're not at your best, come out and just slander you, make fun of you, mock you, mock your kids, the very point of grief that from which all this stems. In the days and weeks that followed, the newspapers made fun of my body and my performance. Dr. Phil called it a train wreck. Oh, well, nobody cares what Dr. Phil says. I mean, Dr. Phil, He is the most manipulative man I've ever seen. Have you ever seen him talking to people on stage? Look, here's the thing. Full disclosure, my mom and I used to love to watch Dr. Phil. When Dr. Phil first came out, we could be out in the middle of the city doing something. We'd check our watches and be like, 3:00. We better, we're missing Dr. Phil. I'm not even going to lie, we loved it. But as an adult, now that I go back and I watch some of those episodes and stuff, I'm like, whoa, that guy is a manipulative bastard. Like, he just is so conniving. And the whole idea for the show is so whack, that you're going to help these people by exposing them and embarrassing them, and then like not really give them any true advice, and then offer them a stint at a rehab facility that they typically don't even finish the duration of. Such a messed up show. But anyway, at the time, he was in his heyday, so I guess a word from Dr. Phil would have embarrassed you. Now, she said she was supposed to do press for this, but she didn't, and the only press she did for Blackout was a live radio interview with Ryan Seacrest, if you want to call it that. You guys, I looked that interview up the other day. I don't know what was going on. He calls her house, and she's not awake. She's got 2 people in the house with her, a guy and a girl, who I can't remember who they were. And they're like, okay, just a second, we'll go wake her up. So they wake her up out of a dead stupor. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And Ryan Seacrest is clearly like trying to make something of this weird, awkward moment. He's trying to have a conversation with her, but her friends keep talking for her, and Britney's kind of like real spacey the entire time. At one point, she just like gets up and walks away from the conference call. So then her friends are like answering the questions for Ryan Seacrest. And he's kind of like, maybe we should call back at a later time when she can talk. And I mean, it's just, and the responses, all the questions are super awkward, even when Britney is on the phone. She doesn't like seem to be able to hear him very well. He keeps asking the same question over and over. At one point, he's like, so have you been eating, what did you have for breakfast today or whatever? And what did, your album came out last night. Did you celebrate? She's like, no, we just got takeout. And he's like, oh yeah, takeout? She's like, yeah. He's like, well, what kind of takeout? I know you've been eating a lot of good food lately. I've been seeing all those pictures of you in all those, drive-in windows. It's like, well, no wonder she got up and walked away from this. It's the worst and most embarrassing thing. And it's unfortunate that was the only press she did for the album, because it was colossally cringe, the whole thing. Anyway, what she remembers being offended about was that he asked, how do you respond to those who criticize you as a mom? Do you feel like you're doing everything you can for your kids? How often will you see them? We're here to talk about the record, not here to talk about my kids. And so it was definitely not cool for her in that interview when he asked. And her friend keeps trying to like shift the conversation. He's all like, yeah, let's talk about something more positive. She says, I felt like the only thing people wanted to talk about was whether or not I was a fit mother. Not about how I'd made such a strong album while holding 2 babies on my hips and being pursued by dozens of dangerous men all day, every day. But this is the problem. Change the narrative, Britney. Don't be a victim to it. If you don't want people to be saying those things to you, come out strong. Say, I am so proud of this album. I worked so hard. And the thing that is wild about this album is it's so good, even though my personal life was so busy. I just had 2 babies. In fact, sometimes I'd bring them to the studio with me. And I just knew I had a lot to say. As an artist, I felt like I was at my sharpest at this point. I feel like these songs are super reflective of who I am. And I'm so excited. Let's talk about the songs I'm really excited about on this album. Change the conversation. If you don't like the conversation, change it. Now, at this point, her management team had quit. A bodyguard went to court with Gloria Allred by his side as a witness in the custody case, and he said I was doing drugs, and he wasn't even cross-examined. She said a court-appointed parenting coach said that I loved my children and that we were clearly bonded. She also said that there was nothing at all in my home that could be called abuse. But that part didn't make headlines. And it wouldn't, because the industry wants her to fail. They've eaten her up. There's younger people coming up right behind her. They don't need her anymore. But, she does sell magazines. So the only reason that her career was around at that point was because she sold tabloids and the tabloid papers needed her. I know her career, she says that her album Blackout inspired many artists, and many people have said it was the best when she did, and she personally thinks it's the best she ever did. I don't know. I'm not a connoisseur of her music, so maybe that's true. But I also think that one of the reasons the album did so well at this point was because she was doing so poorly. And people were willing to tune in to see, like, okay, well, what does this sound like? Does she sound like a train wreck on the album?